All right, there's a bar fight at the cantina. Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beggars Canyon. This is gonna be spicy. It's not gonna be blue milk today. That's not what we're serving. We're serving the what's the episode?
The hard stuff.
The death sticks. You don't want to buy death sticks. I don't want to buy death
Attack
sticks.
of the Clones.
Attack of the Clones. You want to? What does he say? You want to better your life. I want to better my life. Okay. Full of it tonight. All right, so we have an exciting thing or a spicy thing we're going to talk about. So let me start off with saying there's already been a lot said on this topic. We want to not go after anyone specifically. We want to go after the kind of the spirit of what's going on, and really talk about, okay, how do we actually act like Christians and what's going on here? Because the world is watching us. I've actually seen, and what we're about to talk about, I've seen atheist YouTube videos using what's happening here as an excuse to say, this is why I'm not a Christian. Like, they're treating each other just like I treat someone I don't like. Well, what do you have to offer me? This is ridiculous. So, and that's nothing other than the Gavin Ortlund, Megan Basham controversy. If you're not familiar with that, just to surmise it, it's Megan Basham came out with the book, Shepherds for Sale, and she kind of names of church leaders that are being influenced by the left, or maybe even puppets of the left that have bad motives for the people of God. But there's also other people she names that are more unknowingly helping the left, or allowing, or their influence is shaping how they think. And one of the useful idiots would be, the Urukai, right? Like useful idiots.
What is with all the?
We got a lot of references going on here tonight.
Nerd quips.
The topic is addressing how as Christians, because we want to be on the side of truth. We don't want to misrepresent anyone. We don't want to slander anybody. And we actually want to defend the one who is potentially being slandered. So in this case, either Megan, is being portrayed as misrepresenting Gavin incorrectly by Gavin himself, or Megan has actually misrepresented somebody. Yeah. And I think what we're dealing with is Gavin presenting his evidence that she has, and Megan. Now, to be fair, I haven't done as much looking into and Megan's reaction, other than, like, I did go on her Twitter. I hate Twitter so much. It's a dumpster fire. I only went there because I wanted to see, I wanted to see what she was saying. And, she is doubling down that she didn't do anything wrong, that she wasn't necessarily calling Gavin a wolf, because now, granted, I have read the introduction to her book and chapter 1. She does make the caveat that everyone, all the names listed in this book are not necessarily wolves. But there is a clear indication that everyone mentioned in this book is either implicitly or ignorantly in sin. And they need to wake up to it and repent, or they're going to continue down this road and turn into the actual antagonists that she will actually name later, who I actually would agree with are enemies of the church, enemies of Christ. They're of the spirit of the Antichrist. I would agree with that.
Sure. You're either a wolf or you're a fork that the wolf is using to eat the sheep. Like, I don't see how that's any better. In fact, it's worse, because the wolf actually has some intelligence, right? You're just a moronic fork, a tool that's being used because you're an idiot. Right. I mean, it's really a worse insult than even the wolf comment.
But even if
they're for sale or whatnot,
even if you take all of that out and you say, okay, let's grant that to her, that she's not calling him a shepherd for sale, that she's not calling him a wolf. Let's just grant it to her, just for the sake of this. Gavin laid out very specific things that she wrote about in chapter 1 that mischaracterized him and that were false. Yeah. So whether or not the overall argument is being made that he's somehow a wolf, or how liberal is he or not, or how much is he participating in a leftist agenda or not, it's that you're taking things out of context to misrepresent him, and you are putting words in his mouth and positions in his mouth. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And this is you don't want to do this when you're in debate. Like James White says this all the time, and really anyone that debates, right? Gavin actually debates. He's debated Trent Horn. He's debated numerous atheists on a lot of difficult topics that Megan Basham couldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, and she shouldn't, because she's a layman. I don't even know why she's writing a book on pastors
she's
as
a
a
woman.
layman. Anyway, that's besides the point. And other pastors are encouraging layman to do this.
Well, it goes to what we
mind.
talked about before in terms of, well, she's not a pastor, Drake. So since she's not a pastor, she can go ahead and function like a pastor, not just over
forces,
not just over a local church, but over the church.
Over the church.
She's a pope.
She's just a smarter layman that, she's the objective person that can really see the true colors, because elders can't do it. We're blinded by our study, and we just want to be buddies with each other, be in our ivory towers. So we got to have people like Megan Basham come in and say, oh no, this is really what's going on. Which is a whole nother, and we've kind of touched on that. But to what April said, to be clear, because a lot of people, a lot of commentators aren't even clear on what actually is the problem, or like what is the accusation that Gavin's accusing Megan of doing. And just for full clarity, like the issue is Megan took 2 quotes from his video on climate change and actually misrepresented the whole purpose of the video. Gavin's very clear in his video that the purpose of it was not to have to not give a dogmatic opinion, I guess a dogmatic opinion on what climate change is or what, right? His point was saying, like, as Christians, we should not be afraid of talking about difficult things, and no one has a monopoly over truth. The left doesn't have a monopoly over it, and the right doesn't. What we, as Christians, we are after truth. What Gavin was curious about was climate change, and as Christians, Christ is the monopoly of truth. We can actually say what is true because Christ has said what is true. So Gavin is saying, look, if you want to actually have an intelligent discussion about something as volatile as climate change, as Christians, it's our prerogative to go in not as ignorant parrots. We're not going to just parrot people that we hear. We're going to go and study and read. That's the responsibility of a Christian. And I would agree with that. And he uses climate change as kind of the example, and then he just kind of gives his opinion on it, which I disagree with. I disagree with it, but Megan took that and twisted it and took quotes, 2 different quotes from that video, spliced them together to make it sound like he was saying the conclusion was, if you don't believe the science, you're a conspiracy theorist and you haven't done your homework, and that's not good. A Christian shouldn't do that. And it's implicit, or it's inferred. I guess I inferred it, but I think it's implied. It's implied that Gavin was saying this is part of the gospel, and if you don't care about climate change, you should maybe look at your salvation, because you obviously don't care about, you don't love your neighbor. They keep throwing the love your neighbor football, which they're eating their own words, because this is the theology they've brought into this world. That makes perfect sense in the love your neighbor, everyone is your neighbor theology, and somehow they don't like it when it's not in their narrative, apparently.
Well, she's even repeated that whole love of neighbor thing, talking about immigration and all sorts of other issues in interviews. And it's like, okay, so that theology is feeding into it. I almost feel like this particular controversy, you have multiple errors of evangelicalism and sin, the sins that we allow in these circles, converging into one controversy. Things like lack of comprehension skills, right? So that's a big thing right now. There's this a real problem with people having a lack of comprehension skills, and you've got 2 kinds of people, because then you have people who may comprehend, but they're malicious, so they don't want to, they don't like you, so they're gonna like distort it on purpose. But then you've got people who just, in our culture, let's just face it, our culture has become dumber over time. And I don't know if it's, TikTok. I don't know if it's what it is. It's just a lack of comprehension skills. It probably is connected to our lack of reading. But there's a lack of comprehension skills in hearing people speak. There's also this idea that so when it comes to when he makes the comment about the climate change and the experts and all that sort of thing, because of that COVID thing with trust the experts, and then we had some people who claim to be experts completely mislead people. Now people feel justified in not only not trusting experts, but thinking that they actually know better than the experts, except when they need to have a surgery done. Suddenly no one wants to play around with that, but everything else, they know better than the experts now. So you can't be an expert Bible scholar. You're arrogant if you say that. People know better than you. You can't be an expert when it comes to science or whatever. And we realize that there's an agenda in there, but it's this radical mistrust, I think, that goes into the whole thing of experts, teachers in the church.
It's of authority. It's authority.
Right,
it's
of authority in general.
It's a distrust of authority.
Right, a distrust in authority, and so everything needs to be questioned. And then you've got that playing on the lack of comprehension skills, to where I'm just going to jump when it's an authority to the most radical conclusion possible, most extreme conclusion, because they're probably trying to deceive me or bring in leftism somehow or whatever. And so authority is basically a threat now. People on YouTube are a threat if they're scholars. And so it's just, you have all these different things that are just wrong, coming into one place with, I think, this controversy, which is why I think it's kind of stirred up so much. I don't think it's just about Gavin Ortlund. I think it actually has to do with all these issues, the fact that we accept slander in the church and it's not called out and it's okay. And when someone says, hey, I think you've slandered me, it's joked about and dismissed like it's no big deal. When Jesus says it's murder and you're going to hell for it. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's multiple things coming together that I think need to be corrected within the church.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is that we live in a soundbite culture. And because we live in a soundbite culture now and everything is instantaneous, people have very small attention spans. They're not willing to fully hear anyone out. So they don't want to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe I don't fully understand this person's position. They're going to just take one quote and see that this person said this. So that means that overall they're bad, right? And going back to what you were saying, every person now is their own expert on everything.
Right.
I can freely admit that I don't know enough about climate change to say definitively whether humans are causing it or not. I'm not an expert in this. Now, I can have certain, inclinations on what I think is true or not, but you can't be an expert on everything. And the people who claim to be experts on everything are lying to themselves and to others.
Well, and I think the problem is that if you're an expert in everything, you're also an expert on what, like, I've said. So I don't even get to correct you about what I say because you already know. You heard it for yourself. You are the perfect interpreter of what I say. And so in this controversy, like, Gavin's sitting here saying, hey, look, that's not what I was saying. Here's what I was saying. And she's still like, no, I know what you were saying, because I'm the perfect interpreter of you. I'm the expert, not you, of even your own words. It is arrogance to the height of arrogance, almost to the point of claiming divinity.
But not even just ridiculous. Your own words. It's your own motivations too.
Right.
I know your motivations.
Right.
And even if you say, my motivation is to love others in the church, and I'm concerned about people, and I want to make sure that, people are thinking through these issues cautiously and calmly. Well, no, you're just a sellout.
No, your motivation's money.
But that's the problem, is you don't know what someone else's motivations are unless they tell you what their motivations are. And for
Paul
you to
literally
assume
says this,
is
right?
evil.
Yeah, Paul literally says, do not judge a person's motivation before the time. God's going to reveal it later. You don't actually know them.
I want to. So I brought this video up because this this controversy started a long time ago. This controversy probably started 2 years ago.
Is this when she calls him a liberal?
Well, they both do. I think he does initially, and then right. So I want to play. It's about it's just a few minutes. If you guys want to say something through it, just I'll stop it. But this is the kind of what you're just talking about, putting intent, their heart. I can tell you what they actually mean. Don't listen to what they say they mean. They can't be right. They can't know themselves. We know them, and you have to listen to us. So let me play this.
Ortlund, are you familiar with him?
I am.
How do you feel about old Gavin?
I feel
Gavin Newsom. I mean, Ortlund.
Ortlund, yeah. Gavin.
All right, so we already have a
That's
joking.
already a dig.
That's already a dig. We have a joking comparison to an actual
lunatic leftist.
Yeah, that murderer, has nothing good, no good intention whatsoever.
I put him in definitely the progressive camp.
Progressive.
How?
Camp.
What is progressive
He's
about him?
Definitely in the progressive camp. Why? Because he sounds like it's all you. Gavin Newsom, Gavin Ortlund. They're really easily confused.
You know what the crazy thing about that is that the only progressive doctrine that Gavin holds is that he's a credo Baptist like this woman is. That's the only thing that you can tie to the Enlightenment.
Boy.
Dig.
You weren't kidding when you said it was going to get spicy.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the foot in the door of liberalism.
Individualism. Welcome to credo baptism, because the individualism that comes out of the Enlightenment, that's the only progressive thing. So she's actually progressive as well. Everything else that Gavin, look, I watch him. We all watch him a lot, right?
I watch I've watched every video
of his videos.
of Gavin.
He is incredibly historically orthodox. More so than most Reform people I know.
Yes.
So it is ridiculous to call him progressive unless you're talking about his credo baptism that she shares with him.
And not only that, but Gavin is the one that's making inroads to reconciliation of ancient church splits. There's one recent video that Gavin put out where he was in Greece having let's call it interfaith dialogue with an EO, right? And trying to say, like, where do we agree? Where do we disagree? Where can we actually, is there a time in the future where we can get past these things and maybe reunify? I mean, I'm sorry, but like a liberal isn't going to care. A liberal is going to tear up the church. It doesn't care about unifying the church. It wants to tear it up. That's what liberalism is. It's just another satanic religion that's trying to bring chaos into the world. And
he doesn't care about doctrine because he's trying to dialogue with an EO guy. Because you only want to try to like reconcile to people who have no
Baptists,
creed whatsoever.
Right. The non-denominational. Let's get them back in.
Right, but you don't want to like try to like work out issues with people beyond that.
Non-denominational just means that you're a denomination unto yourself.
Well, yeah, right. I mean,
then you have millions of denominations because each person is their own denomination.
It's actually just admitting you don't know anything. We're non-denominational. That means we haven't really read much, but we know that Jesus loves you. That's what non-denominational, because John 3:16.
Well, non-denominations means Baptist without being constrained by any sort of Baptist denomination.
But here's the other issue, and even just her initial reaction and her demeanor is very much showing the larger issue. And I think the biggest issue in all of this is that they will know us by our love for one another.
Yep, right.
And that is not happening.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the opening, atheists are using this tiff to just reinforce their,
like, is he your brother in Christ? Because if he is, then this is not love.
Well, this is actually the problem. I think that transcends all other problems, right? It ultimately is the idea that, oh no, our Christian witness is going to be diminished because people are going to get off on climate change with the leftists, or oh no, people are going to go off and they're going to think that homosexuality is okay with the leftists, or, you know, whatever, transgenderism or whatever the woke issues are, critical race theory, all that stuff. And in reality, what's destroying the witness of the church the most is all of the lack of love because of the slander, because of the impatience in trying to understand people and what they're actually saying, not allowing people to have nuance, not taking people in context. And therefore we portray to the world that we are ready to devour one another at just the drop of a dime. And who then wants to say, oh, that those people must be of God? God is love. Oh, those people must be of God, because look at how they rip each other apart so easily.
Right.
The witness is destroyed.
The witness is destroyed. And people might say, well, why are you guys talking about this? Because you're furthering the divide. And what I want to say is what we're doing here is pointing it out. And now at the end of this, we're actually going to do a general call to Christians to stop. Like what we're watching in this video right now, which I think when I went to Megan's Twitter, right, and she's saying things like, "Oh, I don't think Gavin is, again, a wolf," you know, It's clear 2 years ago, Gavin you're using wolf language. Right? Like, I don't know if I believe you now, because what you're saying then is not very good. But this needs to stop.
Well,
and I'll tell you why.
Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, like, you know, maybe the people involved in this controversy aren't even going to hear our podcast, our little podcast or whatever.
Sure.
However, people need to realize this is happening. The same thing. This is simply, you might want to say a microcosm of what's happening throughout the church's local and universal, that you can actually have a hand in stopping. Stop doing this. Stop just listening to something, thinking you know what it's saying and writing it off or mischaracterizing it. Make sure that you're actually characterizing it correctly. Make sure you're not involved in slander. You know, you can stop it by stopping in your local church right now.
Right.
Well, I think this is why we're all fired up about it, right? Because this is what happened in our own church. This is the kind of slander that went on in our own church that just
this destroyed our
completely
church.
destroys.
For anyone that
It
doesn't know
destroyed
that.
our church. It destroys the character of people.
Yeah.
And when you allow this to continue, it leads to massive church splits and the destruction of relationships. That's the end of this.
It corrupts everyone, because it turns everyone, look, it puts Christians who should all be on the same side onto opposite sides and makes the one side bitter toward the other, and it corrupts them and creates a darkness in Christian. It's absolutely evil.
Yeah.
I won't pretend to know everything that he's written, but
so I won't pretend to know everything that he's written, but I'm gonna give him a label that is definitive, like the case is closed.
Well, and usually that's an admission that she doesn't know much about him. Like whenever you say
knows
that,
less than what you've said.
Yeah. Like if you actually have studied someone and what they've said a lot, you don't make that statement.
Right. You have the receipts, as she would say.
Right. Like you may not have studied everything, but if you studied a person enough, you only make that statement when you actually have not studied a person a whole lot. You've only heard things here and there.
Right.
Gavin and I had a few debates on social media. I didn't really know who he was. I was familiar with his brother's book, a little bit familiar with his dad, but he was putting forward these arguments about climate change. Well, I'm married to a meteorologist, so I know a little something about that. And he was arguing that this is an issue Christians really need to care about. And for me, knowing what I know about that particular issue,
can we stop there?
Yeah.
Christians should care about climate change. Whether you think that it's human caused or not, Christians should care about environmentalism. I know even just saying that triggers people on the right, but we have been given a beautiful creation that God has made, and we are to be stewards over that. So we should care about it. I don't know how that's even a controversial statement.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if she's trying to make the distinction between environmental issues and climate change specifically, because liberals use climate change, and that's the thing that's kind of up in the air. Like, do we actually affect climate? Everybody agrees climate change exists, right?
Right.
The issue is whether or not we have that significant enough of an effect on it where we can change it. However, it 100% is a Christian thing to and something that would actually speak to whether or not you are a faithful Christian to say, hey, let's create order and not chaos in the physical world. Let's not pollute the waters. Let's not pollute the sky. Let's not pollute the land and possibly kill future Christians by our pollution. That's probably a good thing for Christians to actually consider and think about, and not just go through and just waste, throw things here, throw things there.
Well, let me
go ahead.
So this is where I'll agree with Megan in her book, because she brings this up in her book, and she affirms that, you know, as Christians we should be concerned about the environment. We need to create and sustain life, right? I think she even brings up the mandate in Genesis 1. She understands that the issue is, and the blinders come on when you use terminology like climate change, because it's attached to the left, who are using actual climate change as an excuse to kill humanity.
Yeah.
So they are actually passing real policies that will abort babies, right? Reduce the population, because that's how they think that's how they can get
Neo-Malthusian, and
right.
So this is the deeper issue. Then the deeper issue is not should Christians care about the environment? It's why do Christians care about the environment versus what does the unbeliever think about the environment and how you should care for that. So I understand that the climate change agenda is anti-life, anti-human. I understand that. But as Christians, we should care about these things from a pro-life, pro-human position.
Yeah.
And this is where Megan shoots herself in the foot.
Was saying.
So this is where Megan shoots herself in the foot, because that's literally what Gavin was saying. If you watch his video, he makes the statement, as populations increase, it's our job to plan for that, right? So you improve the technology. You don't reduce life to dominate creation as we're commanded to. You improve whatever you need to improve to allow more people to survive and live and be born and all that stuff.
Yeah, but
that's
Drake,
Gavin's point.
Liberals have already used climate change, so we can't go over and view it from a Christian perspective anymore. It's too late.
Right.
Just like we cannot observe Christmas now because the liberals are already using it. We can't do anything like that. If liberals have used it, there's no Christian view of that thing.
It can't be redeemed.
This is fundamentalism.
This is fundamentalism.
Right. This is the sort of Gnostic fundamentalism. Oh, well, the world's trashed. I can't redeem it in any way. It's like, no, Christ redeems the world. Yeah.
But that's my point, is like you're acting like, and this is what a lot of Christians on the right do now, is they act like as soon as you talk about any environmental concern, right? You talk about recycling, and then Christians on the right get up in arms. Like, recycling, well, that's a leftist thing. And it's like, you have recycling at your house, Drake.
Well, that's because of Katie. But...
Okay, well, so she's the good steward.
This is going straight in the trash. Just kidding.
But that it's not a virtue for you to just swing all the way to the other side because you're being reactionary. That's not
well,
virtuous.
And it's not protecting anything, right? Because we're protecting true freedom in Christ, and Gavin is limiting Christianity to this view. And to Gavin's point, he's like, actually, Megan's the one that's done that. Well, Megan's the one has made this part of the identity of a Christian.
Again, it recycles back to the authoritative issue. I actually think that people don't like authority telling them what to do. And especially if it's a secular authority saying it, they definitely don't want them telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And environmentalism in our culture, we're being told to do it, right? Where authority is saying to us, you have to do this. And people don't like that. Now I realize there are all sorts of wicked agendas put onto it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't obey authority. It doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to experts and listen to authority, but do so with a Christian worldview instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
And that was Gavin's other point, right? Gavin's was saying, like, look, statistically, like, look, God is a God of math, so statistics is a true science. And I went to grad school for qualitative analysis, so I know statistics, and I actually like it.
He knows them. He just doesn't know how to say it.
I don't know how to say statistically.
He didn't go for any verbal.
I'm not an English major, April.
I wasn't. I have an accounting degree.
Oh,
I wasn't an English major.
All right. Well, I never read as a kid, so or took hooked on phonics. I lost my point now. Oh, come on, April.
Statistics.
Oh yeah, statistically, is every scientist going to be as I'll use the term that Gavin says, in cahoots in this conspiracy to hide the real thing that's going on in the world, what's really driving climate change? That it's chemtrails. I've seen people were seeding clouds. Like, I went to University of North Dakota for my undergrad, right? It is the second largest aviation school in the country, I think in the world. Embry-Riddle and University of North Dakota are the two. The UND had grants to do cloud seeding research, where they fly aircraft and they seed clouds, basically things that moisture can condense on, and it would build clouds so that in areas that are in drought could have rain potentially. But they blow this up to like, well, now the government's just seeding clouds everywhere, and this is why flooding's going on. It's really that the left is just flying airplanes around, spewing out seeds everywhere, and that's the reason for climate change. And now they're trying, right? So it's this kind of conspiratorial. Like, not every scientist is going to be okay if that were true. Let's say that were true.
Yeah,
everyone's gonna be like, oh, you're actually just like throwing seeds in the cloud, and you're. What this isn't science. Because some people actually dedicate their lives to the quote unquote science, right?
Yeah, authority is out to get me. It's out to just rule over me and make rules over me and push agendas over me. And I can't trust authority. So it's got to be some sort of conspiracy going on with climate change. And yes, again, has it been used a particular way? Yeah. Again, I don't know if there is really a way to figure out if we affect the climate in any significant way. However, I do think that, like, regardless of whether we do or not, it's probably good not to pour a bunch of chemical smoke in the air.
Right.
Even if we can't prove it, probably not good to be breathing that. Probably not good for our children to breathe it.
When you look at like all these conspiracy theories, whether they're on the left or on the right, and this is just running rampant now, the problem is that this comes into the church, and now you have a gross mistrust of authority in the church. So that's why you have people like Megan going out and putting out books and behaving like she's a pastor, because there is no authority structure over her, because this is a part of what's baked into the American church now is I'm distrustful of everything, including my church, including the elders who are over me. I don't have to listen to them. So it is a problem when you behave this way in politics. It comes into the church.
Well, so she actually mentions this in her book, in either in the introduction or chapter 1, that it's not. And this is where I'm like, this is Reformation. This is like the ugly stepmother of the Reformation, because like, right? They're like magisterial reformers, or they come off as like Megan's going to come off as a magisterial reformer, right? She still believes in authority. She says this in the book. You need to listen to your elders. You need to listen to I'm not trying to subvert authority, but I'm trying to unmask, right? The indulgence. She even uses the word indulgences. I am trying to unmask the indulgences of what's going on in the modern day. She is the I guess the female Martin Luther here, and there is like this persona of like Reformation 2.0, like instead of Rome, now we have the secular government, right? So we've lost all trust in their authority. We do need some kind of authority structure. They're not sure what it is, but they know that that one's bad. So we got to get rid of it. And the same thing that happened in the Reformation would happen in this circumstance too. You get rid of authority. If you tell everyone to not trust authority, then it's going to turn into anarchy. You're going to have a peasants' revolt where hundreds of thousands of people die.
Yeah,
people don't
You're
have no clue of that.
Regicide and
yeah,
everything that occurred.
You're going to start drowning people in rivers and locking them up in dungeons until they die.
Yeah,
that's what this kind of magisterial reform. You think you're in the spirit of the reformers, but you're actually in the spirit. I hate to say it. That's the spirit of Antichrist. That is chaos. It's not how you reform.
It reminds me of even before the Reformation and after it, of a little bit of like the Inquisition and the witch hunts.
Oh yeah,
that went on where there really were people playing with the occult and probably were witches and all that, but there also were a lot of people who were thrown into that just because of stuff like this. People thought they heard something that they said, or people didn't like them, so they were unwilling to listen what they were actually saying or doing, and there was a lot of slander going on, and that sort of thing. And it just it leads to the destruction. It leads to anti-life. It leads to death. It leads to the destruction of people's character and their very livelihoods and whatnot. Now, again, having said all this, I do want to point out we would probably agree with the main targets in her book, which seem to be SBC guys.
Yeah.
Because the SBC has been infiltrated with a lot of wokeism, critical race theory, and you got J.D. Greer talking about how homosexuals should be welcome in the church. Yeah, whisper. The Bible doesn't really talk that much about sexuality. I was like, you gotta be
right.
Yeah. So there is a lot of garbage, and we'd be like, spot on. And we would listen to these guys who would critique it, and we'd be right there with them. Absolutely. In reality, this particular chapter is unfortunate because it really doesn't belong with everything else, because it really can be something that Orthodox Christians believe in and even think is something that all Christians should do. That's an opinion that all Christians should do it. And you're right, standing in Christianity, you should do this. That's not affecting the gospel. Because you're arguing over whether or not this is an aspect of love for God and creation and people. You can have those arguments. That's fine. No one is saying that you're saved by these things, but some people might actually say, hey, as a result of being a Christian, one of the evidences might be that you care about these things, and you can debate on how they look or whatever. But it really should not belong in this book, because that's not true of the other subjects. Right. Like judging people over race and making everything about race is a denial of the gospel. Right. Allowing for unrepentant sin when it comes to sexual sin is a rejection of the biblical gospel. That's not true with this issue. So it should not exist in this book. It should have never been written as a part of this book.
Yeah. And not only that, but people are accusing Gavin of equating like abortion, pro-life arguments, or being, anti-abortion with climate change, and saying, he says, if you care about the unborn, then you're going to care about climate change. And really all he was saying, and he even clearly says this at the end of the video, all he's saying is look, there's room to both care about abortion and the climate. You don't have to just be, anti-abortion. You can actually care about this too as a Christian. It's okay.
Let's say he's right. I'm not saying he is, because I don't think there's a definitive way to say it, but let's say he's right and climate change is going to kill a bunch of babies in the future. Is it equivalent? I mean, it is. There is a connection. I mean, if you actually can control climate change and you just continue to live in a manner that basically you don't care about the future generations and they're going to die from what you're doing, then you actually are killing babies too, and yet you're against abortion. I mean, again, I'm not saying that's true, but ultimately I can see from his perspective that would be something that would be on par. with it. Now, the problem is he'd have to prove that was something.
But even like going back to when he talks about triage, let's say, and I don't think this is what he's saying, but let's say that Gavin said to be faithful, if you are pro-life, then you should care about climate change, and you should believe that climate change is going to kill future generations and cause drought and famine and et cetera, right? And he said that, I think that this is something that Christians should believe. So what? I mean, that doesn't make him not a Christian. That doesn't make him a false, a wolf in sheep's clothing. In my mind, these are issues that Christians can say, well, this is what I think. I think that you should care about this, whatever. And you can say, well, I don't think that's a first-rate issue, or we can talk about triaging issues, but I don't understand why everything has to be a first-tier issue now.
Yeah.
Everything is, if you disagree with me on any of these 525, things that I support, then now I'm going to question whether you're a faithful Christian.
Well, I think the problem there is that evangelicalism lacked a worldview. And so all it was ever was this husk of, I believe in the Trinity. I believe in the deity of Christ. I believe in the inerrant word of God. And it was kind of this husk, but without any sort of worldview. So now people are realizing, that was empty. It didn't change anyone's life. So now it's like, well, we're going to bring in the whole worldview of Christianity. But now you need to realize the whole worldview is disputed. You don't necessarily know everything that is the worldview of Christianity, and there's different opinions on things that you just can't know. And so that's why I think Gavin's whole thing of like, you have to actually really think through these issues. What is a first tier issue? What's a second tier issue? What's probably more on the peripheral? Those are going to be probably more opinions, like what you believe about climate change.
I feel like I can't even talk about this issue calmly because it just enrages me.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Well, one, we've been through it, and two, it's sad to see someone who is as charitable as Gavin, who's not constantly throwing firebombs at other people. You notice like he still gets it. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned before, he's mentioned getting death threats still. Yeah. And you just see like the truth, just people hate it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, because even in the original video that he made about this whole situation, and he was just saying, I pray for her. I wish blessings for her. And I was like, he's being a lot nicer than I would be.
Yeah.
I mean, he's being a lot more charitable than I would want to be. And it's
he did a couple years before call her a troll.
Did he?
A troll, like as in like an internet troll. So in other words, someone who's like looking for controversy, which I think that's interesting. Before any of this happened, he actually said that she was a troll.
But he probably said it so nicely.
What? What did you say?
It's like, Megan, I think you might be, just, in my radical opinion here, a troll, perhaps.
Oh yeah, and the is Discord.
I
Discord.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well,
I don't get the hate for him.
No, I don't get it either. But so this is why Gavin, I think, is so surprised about all of this, because I think he's generally like, what? Because he's obviously a guy that reads church history, and he understands that these are Christians talk about these things all the time. There are things that Christians emphasized in the 2nd, 3rd century that we don't emphasize today. And, that's okay. They were dealing with different things. Mm-hmm. This is what we're dealing with. So when Gavin talks about, hey, as Christians, we're the ones that should be able to talk about this openly. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of the call of that video was to say, let's have a conversation about it in a civil way as Christians, because we actually have Christ, and this isn't an existential issue for us. And there is a problem. If we actually discover that there is a problem, we can actually combat it as Christians, when the world's going to do it their way and kill half the population and trying to fix everything. Christians can actually do it and bring life. And then everyone says, well, now you're with the left. And I was like, what?
Well, you know what it reminds me a little bit of, and we've talked about this before, right? And I've made statements that might seem radical to people, but when we talk about being humane to animals that we're going to eat, right? Yeah. I've said, if you can, it is your duty, especially as a Christian, to make sure that the animals we eat are handled in a humane manner. Mm. However, from also a Christian perspective, if you need to treat them inhumanely in order to preserve human life, then do that. Right. If you have to. Yeah. Because human life is greater than the pain of an animal, the preservation of a human life. And so that doesn't sound like it fits in any camp, because I would say it's a biblical stance, and biblical stances often don't fit well in any camp. One, I'm concerned about how animals are treated, which is usually that's a lefty issue. But then on the other hand, I'm not concerned over humans, which that sounds like a right issue. And it's like, well, no, it's actually probably a biblical perspective that both of those are brought together. I think the same thing happens with the climate change thing, environmentalism, whatever it may be. You're probably not going to sound good enough for either camp. I bet the leftists listening to Gavin hated it because he wasn't like as radical enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like he's a shill Christian. Of course, he would go. Yeah, be weak like that.
But I have a theory why people hate him. But
well, sure.
What's your theory?
So
he's an angel in disguise.
Because because he's soft.
Turn that into a short.
Alexander, that's for you.
That could be a sitcom. Or it already was. So it
I think it probably was.
Touched by an Angel.
Touched by an Angel.
Featuring Gavin Ortlund.
Yeah.
When you walk.
Because he's soft-spoken. And he's, I don't know if this is going to be a backhanded comment. He's kind of a smaller looking guy. He's thinner, he's not, doesn't look big. I think this is what happens in school, right? Insecure guys bully that kind of guy.
Sure.
In order to make themselves feel like they're more men. And I see in this group, there's a lot of talk about masculinity, but it's that sort of masculinity that, yeah, I'm a man because I, drink beer and I smoke cigars and I, shoot some guns and all that sort of thing.
You're offending the South.
All the like stereotypical things.
Rascally rabbit. And it's that sort of like.
Don't ruin your point.
It's that sort of. Like you're protesting too much, right? It's an over like, oh, I'm masculine. Really what you're saying to me. And I've known the guys personally, some of these guys, I know they're insecure because their wives make them feel that way, or their job makes them feel that way, or something like that, or maybe their background with their father or whatever it may be. These are the types of guys who are insecure in their masculinity, and they tend to actually then pick out guys who are weaker. I'm not saying that's always the case with this issue or any of that, but I think I get the feeling that like Megan's along with like that group of guys, because there's always a girl that kind of joins those types of guys, right? And I think she's tough because of it or whatnot, and that's part of the in group. But it makes me feel like, well, in reality, these guys just view Gavin as weak, and they don't like him because of it.
But this is a continuation, of the conversation that we had about gender, because it really is, it's centered on American stereotypes.
Yeah.
Because, I'm married to someone who, yes, he was born here, but his parents are not your traditional Americans. And these types of traditionally masculine, I'm going to go out and shoot and, do this and are just not a part of how he views masculinity.
No, masculinity.
So he's viewed a certain way.
Yeah, most masculinity in most cultures is you're really submissive to your family. You're doing a lot for your family. You basically are a servant to your family in the way that men should be in, whatever the traditional roles of men and biological roles of men might be. And that would be looked on as almost like you're more effeminate in our culture.
Because you need to set out on your own and you need to go do it yourself.
Slay your own dragons and go out of your house and all that garbage.
You got to go fight your giants. Go fight your Goliaths. Come on. You're not a man until you become David.
Yeah.
I heard that in a sermon yesterday.
I think before I forget, and this is this podcast is all over the place. But I wonder sometimes when people bring up these issues, how much they understand about church history, because there were points in early church history where you had people who didn't fully understand the Trinity. They didn't fully understand the deity of Christ or what that meant or how that looked or how that played out. And they're just trying to deal with the information that they have in their time. And they're trying to be faithful to Scripture and faithful to God. And they're trying to work through those things. As history progresses, we are going to be met with different challenges as Christians based on the times that we live in, based on the knowledge that we have, either scientifically or whatever, relational issues are going on in our culture. And we're going to have to try to address those in a Christian way. And climate change is a newer issue for Christians to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Do we cause it? Do we not? How do we impact it through policy, or don't we? These are all new issues that Christians in the past haven't had to deal with. So you can either look back on people in the past and say, well, you didn't fully understand the Trinity. You didn't fully understand the deity of Christ. You must have been a wolf. You must not have been a Christian. Or you can recognize that each time in history has its own challenges.
Well, and I think also love covers a multitude of sins, right? So ultimately, what's really important in the Christian life is that you are in submission to God because you love him. You want to love the brethren. And if you don't understand things, then that, it doesn't really matter. The problem is love doesn't cover rebellion. And so if you are rebellious towards doctrine and you are rebellious in your attitude toward loving the brethren or whatever, then ultimately that's where we need to start saying, hey, you're probably not a Christian.
Yeah. I mean, what's disappointing to say is the questioning of one's faith right now in the circumstance between Megan and Gavin would be more Megan in my mind, because she is being brought with evidence of slander, and she's worried about that. Gavin said, well, it's fine if you say Jesus came in the flesh, not that, you didn't say Jesus was fully God, fully man. It's like, okay, well, to April's point, right? He's bringing up, something new and something that Christians need to deal with, and just clearly misrepresenting. And real quick, do we want to finish this video? It's not that much longer, and the more egregious thing comes from the pastor, dude.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, from Joel.
Yeah.
That just set off alarm bells. And he mentioned, I have this podcast about why Christians should care about climate change. So I went and watched this podcast. And much like some reporting I did on Francis Collins, and if you're not familiar, the former National Institutes of Health director, and how he used evangelical leaders to push the government's message regarding vaccinations, masks, shutdowns. Well, in this case, Ortlund was using the UN and the arm that studies climate change to argue this is great evidence. You should go look at this, and it will tell you why there is a scientific consensus. Which, by the way, anytime you hear scientific consensus as an argument these days, big alarm bells should go off. They don't really want you asking questions about it. So what I happen to know about this arm of the UN is that it's extremely corrupt, and that it got into a lot of trouble a few years ago for suppressing the results of some studies, for faking results in studies to get the answer that they wanted for climate change. And of course, what we know is that is being used to inform policy. It's why your gas prices are so high. It's why your grocery prices are getting higher. And it's a way to implement what I would call some really authoritarian policies. So when you are using your platform as a pastor to say Christians should care about this issue, that the government is particularly pushing and using government sources. That to me is you're an activist now.
Yeah.
Can you stop it right there?
Gavin Ortlund, I always say he's
so yeah, that was masterful manipulation.
Oh yeah.
This is why
that's what we women are good at.
Yeah, there you go, cunning.
That's why Adam ate the apple. That sounded great.
Like Ravenclaw.
No, like Slytherin.
Oh, like Slytherin, right? Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Harry Potter and Patreon, so that's a foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But notice, like, this is why you're paying more for your groceries. It's like, well, one, no, it isn't actually. You're paying more because our government is spending ridiculous amounts of money, and everybody's out of a job, and now, everybody wants to get the same amount they had before for their product, and they're making less product now. Like, there's multiple reasons why you're paying more money, not just because of some climate change study. But then she was like, and they falsified a couple climate change studies, and it's like, well, did they falsify all of them? Like, what? Who cares if it's just a couple out of like tens of thousands of studies? Like, I want to know, like, what are the numbers? And yet we don't know that. It's just a lot of this is like rhetoric that's used to kind of get people on your side and poison the well. And it's kind of like, well, okay, what does this have to do with what Gavin was saying about climate change? Because of the fact that, maybe he saw some studies that they used or something. It sounds like
magic words.
Yeah,
he used the magic words, climate change.
Right, climate change, right.
He said
automatically.
So he's an activist.
Right.
Alexander, will you put me on stage?
Climate change.
He's one of my favorite race hustlers. Right.
Gavin is one of his favorite race hustlers.
Wow.
What like?
Where did that come from?
Did he mean to say like Gavin Newsom and he like as a joke and then he said Gavin Ortlund or something? I don't even know. Like I mean,
Gavin Newsom is a race hustler. So
yeah, right. Gavin Newsom would be evident. You can find clear evidence
again.
of that.
Yeah, this sort of poisoning of the well. It's sort of like yeah.
So. And this isn't Megan now. This is an elder. This is an elder that's just said this.
Oh, you mean Hitler? Oh, I mean Joel Webben. It's like, what in the world, dude? Come on, it's ridiculous.
Right there with Al Sharpton.
He's right there with Al Sharpton. Like what? Like
where is that coming from?
I don't know. And you can't tell me whatever Megan says now about Gavin. Oh, I didn't really mean this about Gavin. He's not a liberal. He's not an active. What? Yeah, you did.
Well, she said he was progressive. So
yeah, earlier, right? In this, yeah, she did.
He's a progressive. He's a liberal. He's
a liberal.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Gavin's a liberal, unless you go back 2 years.
Shooting in Texas, or particularly the one in Buffalo, but it's immediately racialized and he just. He will speak. He's not a pietist, so he's not even close. He's not. Let's stay out of politics. No, like Tim Keller, and I would say even more so. Tim Keller probably is just wiser and older about how to say it, but he just.
So Tim Keller's a wiser wolf. Gatlin is just up and coming.
Where is
without any shame at all?
Confused.
Immediately getting involved in every political, cultural issue, but always on the side of the political left. You can immediately ascertain what Gavin is going to think about anything based off of what's the recent report that came out of the White House. All right, Gavin will mirror that, but wrapped in some theological language.
I'm so confused by that.
Again, nothing is in a vacuum. This is, I think, like the backdrop to what she wrote in chapter 1, because this book has been in. She talks about the manuscript in this podcast.
You know what he's really referring to, I guarantee,
what
is
I don't even know.
whether or not you should wear a mask, whether or not you should actually
shut
down
videos
church.
On that.
What does that have to do with race though?
Well, because it's that's all tied to then like the stuff that happened during COVID, and so like whether or not you should the cops should be less trigger happy or whatever. Well, now you're a leftist on that issue. It's sort of like it's all that balled together. It's like, oh, and you'll hear them talk about the even she just mentioned it, right? Oh, these are the people who told us to wear masks and told us to shut down churches and told us to do the race thing and everything. It's like it's all one glob that he's being thrown into, And it's like, well, I mean, my stance. I'm like, yeah, you should have wore a mask, not because it did anything, because the government told you to do it, and it's not sin. Your authority said wear it.
But even like, I mean, you saw like the chaos that wearing masks caused, and how rebellious people's spirits are, that you can't even put a mask on your face without throwing a tantrum.
Right. Well, it just goes to show that, like, yeah, like you're saying, like, people are so rebellious that they don't have a submission to authority when it comes to something that doesn't even matter that much. Imagine if it actually mattered. Imagine if actually they had to sacrifice more than just having a thing on their face. Like, forget it.
Well,
but I guess we're all leftists because we said, you should have worn a mask.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So we're all,
or to believe that you should do church online. You can't do that. That's the Apostle Paul didn't have church online. And it's like, it's like, oh, gotcha. Right. Okay. I guess you don't take airplanes on your mission trips either then. It's like absolutely ridiculous. And what have we said often? Like that time in our church was the most that we were church that I have ever seen.
There's more love coming out from anyone, checking up on each other.
Because church wasn't about, I attend Sunday morning. Church was about, we actually are listening to the word of God and going to be discipled because, man, we really need to do it. And church was about us making sure we fellowshipped and found ways to do that and making sure that people had what they needed more than ever.
Yeah.
And yet, somehow, you guys are leftists because you didn't come in and check the box on Sunday morning.
Yeah. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
For another time. But
let's do them all today.
Yeah. April said earlier, this podcast is all over the place, but I think what we wanted, I think like the thrust of talking about this is the polemics of like fundamentalism, which is saying we have to go back to some baseline that we're going to make up arbitrarily to defend against some other group. And we're going to tag on that biblical for whatever reason. And any discussion about it is done. And if you question it, now you're either, you're opening the door for the enemy to come in, or you're the enemy in disguise. This is the problem. This is why fundamentalism is dangerous. As dangerous as the left, I would say. As dangerous as any climate guy that wants to, as Megan points out in her book, wipe out Sri Lanka because whatever. Because this is what will cause Christians to put other Christians into rivers.
Well, yeah, this is more dangerous to me because ultimately, like it everybody understands that the leftist agenda is not Christian. So there's no deception in it in the church. This comes across as a more faithful, conservative Christianity versus your woke church. And so this is the real Christianity. And so it actually masquerades as a better, stronger Christianity when in fact it's just a much, much worse version of the world trying to overreact against this version of the world and get you off the actual gospel.
Right. And if any fundamentalist that's going to say the gospel is tied into 6-day literal creation or a denial of climate change or a denial, whatever they want to add in there, that's something we should.
But see, that's not even how it works out anymore, though, because it's actually like, we're not saying that you're not a Christian as a 6-day literal creationist or as someone who might believe in climate change.
We're just saying you're a wolf.
Right. We're just saying that, we might even say that. We might even say that you're a wolf. However, you know what? There's something off about you that makes us not want to be part of you. Can you sit at that other table? But you're still a Christian. And it's like, wait a minute, wasn't that what Peter was doing with the Gentiles at Galatia? No, you guys are Christians. Just sit at that other table, though, please.
Is that not literally what happened in our church?
Yeah, it absolutely was.
That's what happened.
Hey,
the irony is we'll
take our club and you guys go sit over there.
Right.
Yeah. You guys are still Christians, but
But we don't want to hang out with you anymore.
Right. Not the kind worthy of fellowship. And it's sort of like, I thought unity had to do with you're united to Christ and a part of his body, and I'm united to Christ as part of his body. And to say that, well, you separate, go over there is absolute stupidity.
Well, the irony is Megan uses the Galatians text in her book that she's Paul, or the book is Paul or whatever, and calling out the Peter. All of them are Peter's. Not all of them, because some of them are Judas's, but some of them are Peter's.
Oh, because she's claiming that they're dividing over the issue, or
that they're influenced by the Judaizers and they just need to be called out and repent. So again, the problem, and this is Gavin's issue. Like, it doesn't matter if you think Gavin's a wolf or not. You're saying he's in sin ignorantly. You're comparing him to Peter. Peter was in sin. He was denying the gospel.
Well, yeah, and she all she's doing is switching the issues for what she's judging whether or not you're being a good Christian for. I mean, I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Like, let's fight actual false gospels,
right?
But like, because then you're just gonna cry wolf, and no one's gonna care when you actually do fight a false gospel. Be like, well, this is just another Christian crying false gospel, and it's no big deal this time.
That is absolutely the problem, because when you actually, because fundamentalists do this on issues that don't matter, either you get people that follow them and they make mountains out of molehills, or you get people who have just heard it so much that when you actually cry out and there is a wolf, they're just like, I've heard that before. There's not a problem.
It's not a problem. And again, this is like, they had, I don't know, there's like this dreams of grandeur, Reformation 2.0. We're still protesting, and now we can, here's my 95 theses right here, shepherds for sale. You're not Martin Luther. It didn't go well. The Reformation was great in so many ways, but it didn't go well in a lot of ways. We don't want to emulate it right now. Okay.
Well, again, if she had just made the book about the other stuff and not climate change or something, like if you had made it about sexuality and leftist agendas in the SBC church, yeah, absolutely. And wokeism, absolutely. It's the SBC church that compromised probably the most from where it was to where it became, came to be within the COVID years on those issues. And that would have been fine. That's great. As soon as you put this issue in, now you throw a bunch of Christians in along with that who don't belong there.
Yeah. So I think I can speak for all three of us, but our position on this would be Megan slandered an elder of the church, an elder.
Yeah.
I know he's not pastoring a church now, but my view on eldership is that he's still an elder, still holds that he can pastor a church anytime he wants.
He's still deserving of honor until even after, look at the early church, even after they die, they're given honor.
Right. We still call Trump Mr. President. I'm going to, he's still a pastor in my mind. So she's slandered a pastor, and we would call her to repentance in that. And revise her book, revision 2 in a week. That's fine. Who cares? You got to do it. So,
yeah.
In a week, that was your time.
Well, well, yeah, the book's been out for like a week, right? I don't know. It's brand new.
Thus saith Gryffindor.
No, I am Raven.
He's Ravenclaw.
Come on.
I think this was all over the place because we're all just fired up about it. And
well, I think, like I said before too, I think multiple issues converge.
They do
on this to where we're seeing all of the problems with modern and the modern reform movement and all of that.
Right. And I am, look, people might say you're just a Gavin fan. You've watched all those videos. You're a Gavin fanboy. Well, yeah, I am a Gavin fanboy. I do like Gavin. I think Truth Unites, his mission in that podcast is the heart of Christ. It is removing boundaries that inhibit people to give their lives over for frivolous reasons they don't need to withhold. Like, well, I just can't get over the 6-day creation, the local flood, a global flood, whatever. And he's trying to unite with like Roman Catholic Church or the EO Church. He's actually trying to build bridges. Ecclesiastical bridges, and I'm with him on that mission. And I don't agree with everything he says. I don't.
Right.
He's a Baptist.
He's a Baptist, obviously. Right? I mean, yeah.
Right. Even though he has said in a video, he's I think he might be moving the other direction. But he had said something.
Let's send him our federal headship video or something and see if we can move him away.
Yeah, you might. But I still believe, regardless, though, this is the danger. None of us want to fall into the trap where I would say some have, like, I'll throw out a name too, like Toby Sumter. He put out a video. That's fine. Of putting justice on the shelf for partiality. I don't want to be partial to Gavin. I like him, but I care about justice and truth. And everything screams right now that justice, that Gavin is in the right, that he is the innocent party. It doesn't matter that I like him or not. I like Megan too. I don't think anything,
Well, I don't remember if April was on when we made this point, but you were making the point how the problem with one of the problems with the modern, I would say, Reformed church that we've been a part of, at least, is that because there's social justice, there's not a whole lot of people who have thought deeply about actual biblical justice. In terms of how do I represent another Christian when, they say something? How do I act toward that Christian? How do I judge that Christian rightly in the eyes of God and biblically speaking? And unfortunately, it just looks like the world. It doesn't look any different. Again, I mentioned how I'm a part of these, like, reef groups, which you probably are too, Drake, right?
Yep.
And it looks the same.
Fish tanks. We don't grow weed in our house.
Yeah. Not reefer, but
not reefers.
but it looks the exact same. There's a group of people, some might be Christians, but most of them probably aren't. But I would not be able to tell the difference in the way that they represent one another and the infighting and things like that from the church.
Yeah.
I can't tell the difference.
The last thing I want to say on this, and this will be the last thing. I want to. I don't think Pastor Sumter will watch this at all, but I do want to say there's something he concludes his. It's not even a response video. His defense video of Megan. He ends his defense video of Megan saying, Gavin made the complaint that Megan didn't reach out to him about his thoughts, even though later the actual men that I would agree with Megan are probably wolves. She makes it clear that she did reach out to them and they never responded.
Interesting.
By the way. So I don't know why Gavin wasn't a part of that.
Wow.
But Sumter at the end makes the claim that Gavin didn't reach out to Megan. So it's the pot, the little pithy opening of the video, even proverbial pot kettle black. Okay. Thanks, Pastor Sumter. The issue is that Megan published a book,
right,
soiling his name.
Yeah. He's not researching a book that he's writing that he needs to verify something. It's verified in the book of what he said.
It's right there. So
it's idiocy.
This is where let's check ourselves as Christians. Let's stop doing this. The world is watching. The world is laughing. And we are dishonoring Christ. We read on Sunday, the sermon, John 15, right? You honor the Father when you honor the Father by bearing fruit, right? We're not honoring the Father right now. This is not abiding in Christ. This is not how fellow members of the body deal with one another. This is literally saying, Pinky, you believe in climate change, Pinky? All right, well, I'm gonna, I don't know. We're not gonna use you. I'm gonna walk around like this now and look like a deformed creature for no reason. It's like, right? It doesn't make any sense. Let's think about what we're doing and actually love one another.
And just to be really clear, as we kind of end here, is that love. We're not saying love doesn't cause you to call out people when they are in sin. It does. We're not saying that love doesn't cause you to actually say, you fool. Paul says that. You foolish Galatians, you fools. You're being fooled. You're participating in idiocy and stupidity, and stop it. What we are saying is that love causes you to give the benefit of the doubt to the person, listen carefully to what they're saying, and not jump to conclusions and distort what they say. That is a demeaning of their humanity. And it is to basically disregard who they are as a brother of Christ and a human being altogether.
Yeah, half truth is a whole lie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we ran out of the spicy beverage, I think. Everyone's had enough. We'll close up shop. And we're going to head to the back and talk about some Voldemort can't take over a Montessori school or something like that.
Drake loves Harry Potter. He's really excited to talk about
yeah,
Harry Potter.
Nerdy kids like fly around in Volkswagens for whatever reason. That's all I remember from the movie. If you want to join us,
you're really selling this well.
Everyone will love hating on me because I'm sure everyone watching is a Potter fan.
April and I like the story. So
if you are a Christian, you'll hate it with me.
Okay, but we do have some really interesting things to talk about. Like, can you redeem pagan stories? And how should we view magic in stories? And should you let your kids read or watch Harry Potter? So stay tuned.
Oh, I did say real quick as I'm closing the door to the cantina. I did say this would be the last word, but this is really the last word. If you don't like Ortlund for what he said, you'll hate Tolkien for what he said about nature. All right, everyone, hit subscribe, hit the like button. If you want to support this ministry, if you want to support Christianity, then be a patron. if you want to breathe
all that's right and good in the world, then,
become a patron. There'll be a link at the bottom.
If you hate puppies and children, then no.
If you like the club baby seals and virtually, and you go to SeaWorld, then don't become a patron. But thanks everyone for watching, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.